discussing a personnel matter, and we had no vote, no action was taken, and we will discuss that in personnel matter at the end of the agenda, as you'll see. This time, what I would like is, what would you do the invocation?
Pray, please. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your many blessings. We thank you for this beautiful sunshine, Lord. We pray that you just give us the ability and the knowledge and way to express ourselves and represent the citizens of Easley. And Lord, please, God bless the city of Easley and God bless America.
Amen.
Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I do want to make sure that everybody knows that Brian Garrison is owned by virtual Facebook right now because he's not feeling well, so that way everybody does know and the minutes reflect that. He will be able to vote because we approved a few months ago that you can vote from home. At this time, I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes. We only have one set of minutes, which is our last meeting.
Approve the minutes.
Motion, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We have, I'd like to turn it over now for a report from the city administrator. I think she's going to give a report and then also going to educate us a little bit about on our public works, I think.
Do you want to do the council updates first, or you want to do me and then go to the council updates?
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. Yeah. Ward one.
Mr. Mayor, council, department head, sorry I'm not there tonight. Sorry, I'm sorry about that. Mayor's here. No report.
Ward two.
Well, Mr. Mayor, we hear so much about the coronavirus, and I'm sure we'll all be talking about that, but I will not talk about that in my report. We'll do something a little more uplifting, but I'd like to recognize Lisa Chapman, our city clerk, for her completion of her coursework, Lisa, which took over 3 years to complete her coursework on the International Institute of Municipal Clerks. Lisa completed 120 hours of classroom instruction on business licensing, on accounting, and municipal law. So pretty soon you will be a certified municipal clerk, and we appreciate you and thank you for your further education, Lisa.
Ward three.
So unfortunately, I will talk a little bit about the coronavirus. One of the things I did want to talk about was just some of the impacts it's having on city operations, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about what you've been hearing from the governor, and that is kind of phasing in some of the reopening of the city and our services and operations. So what I have first is to talk a little bit about how it's affecting finances. So we're continuing to monitor these revenue sources. For those that don't know, our revenue sources do lag behind, usually anywhere from a quarter to a couple months, where the funds are collected and then they're dispersed back to the city. For example, hospitality tax, it's collected, say, for the month of March, but it's not due back to us until April 20th, so we won't know how March looked until the end of April almost, because we have to allow late ones to come in as well. So that money is usually lagging about a month behind, so we can compare it. Local option sales tax runs that same way, but some things like the state accommodations tax for hotels, actually we get it once a quarter. So we didn't know how the first quarter looked until we got the check the first part of May. So we've got some comparisons to talk about that, just to show you how we're looking compared to the previous year and what we're seeing in trends there. So some of the areas that will be affected immediately, hospitality tax, mentioned that one. Athletic and tournament fees, we actually refunded about $30,000 in athletic registration fees for all spring sports, which were canceled. But at the same time, we're also not paying for referees and clock keepers and umpires and those kind of things. We haven't had to chalk the fields. We haven't had to put quick dry on them because of a game coming up after rain. So we have seen some savings in that side of the operational line item. State and accommodations tax, I mentioned that. Business license and local option sales tax. Some that may not be immediate but may show up as we get into next budget year, and we'll talk about that more as we get into the budget work session, is property and vehicle taxes. Some people who don't go back to work related to this or have a lag going back to work, you may see some delinquent vehicle taxes, delinquent property taxes come from that. You may also see some businesses close, and that may lag some of that backwards behind. Building permits, they're currently up. We have seen building continue, but we don't know what that's going to look like moving forward, where if things start to pick back up and we have to close down again in the fall or the winter because of a recurrence, we don't know what that impact may be, so we're monitoring that for future. Some of the ways that, like I said, we have not been bringing our parks part-time maintenance in. We haven't had to bring in any of our part-time employees for parks, so that saved money on there. We've also limited our expenditures as much as we can, and we've also limited our hiring. The only positions that we are looking to hire right now are actually firemen. But we have a couple, I think there's a maintenance park position that we aren't filling right now because the demand's not there to have it. So we are trying to limit that to control our expenditures. So just to talk a little bit about those numbers, starting at the top left, you'll see the local option sales tax, comparing January through March of last year. To date for the year, we're actually about $64,000 ahead of where we were last year. In 2019, you can see that revenue source actually dropped about $50,000 between January and March. This year, it kind of mirrored that, about $50,000. But because it was already higher, it wasn't quite as big of a decrease. It was like 18% versus 15%. We really won't know April's, which is when a lot of everything was shut down. So April will be our really big next one to monitor, and we won't get that check probably to the end of May, the 1st of June from the state. So once we get through April, now that things are slowly opening back up, I think you'll see that number recover some, but we'll see if it recovers as much as it did last year. So you can see in March of last year it was 209. It went up to 280 by May. Once people got out and moving in the spring, we'll see how it recovers in comparison to last year, or see if it lags behind, and that'll give us an idea of what we're looking at for the next 2 or 3 months. Hospitality, you can see the big drop in March there. We're about $70,000 below the previous year. However, for January, February, and March, we're net about $73,000 down. One of the things we're also keeping up is the number of people who pay. So for February, we were down 31 people who paid compared to the previous year. For March, we were down 42 people. We are forgiving late fees through May the 20th or June the 20th right now, so people can get caught up. But a lot of those, for example, are like food trucks that pay hospitality. They aren't coming out, so they're not paying hospitality. But we also have some businesses that completely closed down, like La Finca has completely closed down, so we won't see their hospitality tax moving forward. State accommodations tax, you can see it compared to last year, it dropped about 20%. So we'll see, really April to June will be the big one as well. The local accommodations tax is only down about $2,500, but in March it dropped about $4,500 compared to last year. And then business license is actually a little ahead. We're about $140,000 ahead of where we were at the end of April last year. So we're continuing to monitor that, and we'll see how we look as we go through May and June, because that's a big source of revenue for the city. So as we start talking about phases of reopening, phase 1 was a week of April 27th. That's when we reopened city offices to walk-in traffic. We did keep the fire department locked so that people can't walk in, because when they do, they will actually walk into their living space and kitchen. But if they have their bay doors open, the public is welcome to walk into the fire bays, but not to their living space. We're trying to limit their exposure still. We did not open J.B. Red Owens, but in phase 2, which was last week, we did open J.B. Red Owens back up for traffic for walking. And actually, they did for frisbee golf. We had a couple out there playing frisbee golf, so we forgot about that. So we let them continue to play frisbee golf, because that is a good social distancing event. We opened the tennis courts and dog park back up. We've also been working with the businesses real close the last couple of weeks as the governor has started to relax some of the indoor and outdoor dining. So we're answering a lot of questions. So we anticipate that to continue as the governor today announced that they will be allowing close contact stuff to open back up on Monday next week, which is your barbers, your salons, your nails, your gyms, public pools, stuff like that. So we're sure we're going to have lots of questions, and we're leaning on the state to help us answer those questions. And sometimes we get conflicting answers from the state depending on who you talk to at either DHEC or the governor's office or SLED or whoever. So we're trying to do the best we can to disseminate that information. As you see tonight, we are having the council meeting in person, but it is closed to the public to limit the number of people in the gathering. And then one other note, we did allow the issuing of yard sale permits beginning this week. We had limited that to try to keep people from gatherings of greater than 10. So we did allow those to start issuing today. So if people want to have yard sales this upcoming weekend, welcome to issue those permits. Again, we do ask that they, try to observe as much as they can. And so as we move forward, these are all dates to be determined. We don't know when we're going to reopen Bagwell Gym. Right now, the governor is still saying anything with like basketball or athletics is still to be closed, except for like exercise classes. We will continue to coordinate with the businesses. Right now, we have not been renting the car room to reduce gatherings. We had somebody call today and ask about doing one for 80 people in May or June. So we told them we would hold it, but we're not sure if we would allow gatherings that large. We're leaning on the state and CDC with the guidelines. Right now, they're still going with groups of 10. So we're waiting to see what that guidance looks like as they relax it. And as we talked about earlier, we'll be looking to start court proceedings here in the near future as well. And then finally, this is where it gets back to a little bit of normal, is public attended council meetings like Councilman Robinson talked about a minute ago, city athletic events starting back up, car room rentals being unlimited, reopening the playgrounds and shelters and bathrooms. That would be, those are things that are highly touched, hard to keep clean. So those would be some of the last things that you see coming in. So I know I hit on a lot, but do you have any questions related to how we're tracking or what our phasing of kind of what we're looking at over the next few months before I turn it over to Public Works to talk about recycling and leaf and grass? All right.
All right. Good evening, and this is not a gripe session. It's more of an educational session because we've had a lot of changes. I know a lot of y'all have received communication from constituents concerning grass pickup and recycle. To start out with, we'll hit the grass pickup first because we are looking at purchasing a new machine, and that you are looking at, we have just replaced this impeller and housing. Impeller and housing unit, and this is on our truck that's 10 years old. It's a 1990 model, and you can see when we first started taking it apart, you can see how the grass builds up on the inside, and it cakes up and it gets harder as it stays in there. And this can damage the impeller. It can get it out of balance, and more energy from fuel and energy is needed from the engine to pick the grass up. So we are currently replacing these at a pace of every 6 months, and it runs around $4,000. Now, this last time, we had to spend a little extra money to have the, as you can see in the bottom slide, we had to have some more work done to shore up the housing so that it was wearing out. About right here. Okay. And the last repair cost for that was $2,500 to get that work provided for us. And also, it would be, if we do not pick grass up, you would save on cost of having to replace these units here every 6 months, and also on fuel costs for not running them during the summer. And that's just a thought to throw out there. The downtime for the truck was about a week for it to have all that work done, and you're talking about another week or so when we have to disengage all the filters that are inside the storage bay. The next slide has a trial run that we ran with a brand new truck about 3 weeks ago, and we were in one subdivision, and this, if the truck moves, it does not put the clippings as much on the roadway, but if it stays in one section trying to pick up large piles, the longer that truck stays in that one position, that is basically, anytime Bermuda grass, that stuff is going to come out of the truck. There's no way to encapsulate everything inside the truck. The next picture shows that is the side of the truck after it went down one side of that subdivision, and that is the filter for the engine to the left, and that is the water and hydraulic tank on the right-hand side. And you can see that the grass has completely covered those items up, and in order for the operator to stay out on the route, I have talked to this company to see if we could put an air hose that where he could clean the filter off while he was still out on the route, if we continue to pick grass up. So the next slide shows where you have the new machine and you have the parts for the old machine side by side, and you can see where fertilizers and pesticides eat away at the structure and damage that, so that we have to change it out every 6 months. And also the hardening of the material of the grass also clogs the chutes and the moving pieces. What we're looking for, I guess, is a decision on which way to go. If we decide to continue picking up grass, that unit that you saw pictured is approximately $209,000. I've talked with the company. If we decide to go with these individuals, we would probably need to increase, because of the weight of the wet grass when it is wet, to pick that up, it was struggling to pick up the grass with this. This is about a 71 or 72 horse engine. The next size up, which we spoke with them about, is a 99 horse, and it would add. They were going to charge around 17,000 more, but I've talked them down to just charging an additional 10,005. So 209 versus 219.5 is the difference in the price.
There's still no guarantee that it will
And
not blow it out.
there's no guarantee. Now, that was even with this system here that you see on the left. That tank to the right is a water tank, and that water was actually spraying as it was going through the impeller into the holding storage tank.
How, you mentioned having a compressor unit so you could spray the filter, as you were traversing your route.
Just air.
And it's just that, so
Yeah.
there's gonna be an air compressor built onto this
This what we're, yes.
at no extra cost. But that's-
That, I'm not sure about I don't have, that cost is still being looked at. I don't have a number on it yet.
He just talking about that, so it wouldn't come back.
So that, yes, so that they would stay up.
Good idea, I was just wondering how it was gonna work. I mean,
Yeah, I've talked to the guy from, Southern Vac, and the salesperson said that he would have to look into what kind of unit would be going on there, and then he would give me a price.
Is there no units out there that do this?
Not that picks up leaves.
Not that picks up leaves and grass.
You can get a billy goat type vacuum that will pick up grass, that's all it will pick up. And I don't know, they make it in a larger scale, they make it in something that normally you would drive around a parking lot and pick up grass after they cut and blown it out and you pick it up. You know, they make a lot of them for downtowns to mow, to clear the gutters and sidewalks, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. And it's an enclosed bag, it has a bag on it, not a filter. It's actually like a bag mower, like it sucks it up, it's a bag vacuum.
What have we done in the past? Is this a new problem, or?
It's basic, well, I think we have more people that are putting the grass out. There are larger areas like on our Friday route, that there's a tremendous amount that is placed roadside.
The biggest issue, we've had more people complain.
The more complaint, it's been complaint driven. That's why we're having this, it's the residents,
There's a lot of people that's not satisfied with it.
yeah.
So Mr. Fortner, what do other communities do? What is Clemson or Greenville or?
Greenville is looking at different, matter of fact, they looked at this truck right after we did. They took a look at this. I don't know what their final decision is, but they were interested in it.
But they do the same thing we do. They suck it up to the best of their ability.
Yes, sir.
I'm doing that too.
Clemson, do they run?
They currently are
Or they-
right now. They're bagging theirs. They're picking it up through bags.
They're bagging the grass cuttings.
They're collecting bags, right?
Bagged clippings.
If I could ask,
Landfill and be there forever with.
if I could ask, everybody could make sure your mics are on and that they're close enough to you, because I've got people texting telling me they can't hear you.
This mic's not on.
I know he's got to push a button on the bottom. Battery just.
His button is blinking. You want this one?
It's off green.
Push green, that button on the-
Here, you want,
Well, I'm not ready to speak though. Thank you.
Did I hear it, if we bag grass, that would be taken to the, that just goes to the landfill?
Not like a bag of garbage, it would have to go to what they call C and D. It would actually go into the ground. They would bury it.
Did you hear him? Okay, he said that that would have to go to the C and D landfill to be buried with construction. Yes, yeah, bag.
That just takes a lot of capacity out of the landfill to do it that way.
Takes a lot of lifting to lift those heavy bags.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the next
Yeah,
thing is how
yeah.
to get
Yeah.
the bags and how to transport, how to first pick them up and then transport them.
Right.
And people who would not use sturdy bags and having bags break on you when you're trying to pick them up.
Or put too much in there.
Overfilling,
And if you do it by hand, it's gonna run your workers' comp claim up.
yeah.
So Eddie, we know what Greenville's doing. We know what we know what our neighbors are doing for this. And they're having the same issues that we are.
Yes, sir.
Actually, they're having more issues. They have a lot more trucks to deal with than we do.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a tough decision, and I'm leaning toward, let's bring it back to council to say yes or no. That's my leaning, to yes or no. Should we be picking up grass cuttings, or should we ask our citizens to just keep cutting that grass and mulch it back into the yard, which is environmentally friendly, I believe, but it's a lot of effort and may not be as an attractive yard as some people would wish. So that's the downside. But I recognize the maintenance problem and the expense for doing this. That's and I'm looking at the pictures here. I mean, it's a brand new vehicle, and it looks terrible after one round of in a neighborhood. Am I reading that correctly?
That is correct, yes, sir.
So if we do this day in, day out, that brand-new vehicle is going to look, it's going to be no better than what we are right now.
I'll ask the same question a little more specifically. So what were we doing 10 years ago? What was different 10 years ago than it is today?
I would say the amount is greater than what it was 10 years ago. But the truck that we are now using, which you see here, the inside guts of it, but the outside of it has to be cleaned every time that it comes back in also. So, I mean, we're stepping up what we have to do to try to keep the vehicle as clean as we can.
But were you doing that 10 years ago?
I would hate to be honest, but I wasn't here. I don't know exactly what they were doing, but
I'm trying to figure out, what is different today than it was in the past.
Well, I think one thing we are seeing is a difference in development patterns. And
Yes.
we're seeing smaller lots are now the thing. And the more lots we have that are 45 feet wide, you don't have room to, as I do, I put mine in an area in the backyard where it doesn't matter. It'll decompose and I use it for mulch. But that's not available to somebody who's on a very small lot. But they're still mowing their lawns.
Now you have HOAs that require, a lot more HOAs around that are requiring communities to handle their grass differently than they did in the past. You have a lot more of those communities in here.
Yeah.
You also have difficulty finding machinery to process the material because the difficulty that we face is we don't have a manufacturer out there that provides us a quality truck to be able to do the job and to do it well for our citizens. That's the problem we face now. We can't provide a good service to them due to this situation with the machinery that's available to us.
Is this machine cleaned with air or water pressure like a high-pressure compressor?
the
When you bring it
one,
in an afternoon, do you clean it with water or air?
air,
Water wouldn't knock it out with
you'd probably cake it on there even worse. I mean, I would blow it off first, and then I would possibly wash it afterward.
Brian, you wanna make any comments, you good?
No, just listening, it's a lot to take in, so there are no easy decisions here, for sure. We've discussed this in committee as well, and, we're gonna have to make a decision, but I don't think there's any good ones.
How's the best way to handle this involving the public? Is there a mass communication we can give to HOAs or to neighborhoods to see what the feeling is of our citizens regarding grass clippings versus cutting it back into the yards? How's the mechanics for doing something like this?
We can create a survey or do it on Facebook, we can do it on, Nextdoor or whatever. The question is if they want to continue it and this level of service we can provide is this, and they're going to complain about the level of service, it comes to council to determine whether we spend more money, more staff, more whatever to up the level of service, or whether we stop the service if the level of service can't meet the council's expectations or the cost or whatever that goes along with it. So, but at the same time, if you want to survey your ward, or you know what your ward represents, I mean, that's what y'all are elected for, is to represent your ward. You go out and survey them. But I know based on the complaints that we get, most complaints come from one or two specific wards that we get, because they're the ones that put the most grass clippings out, and they're the ones that when the vacuum truck runs through and it leaves some in their road, they're the ones that call and complain.
Well, no one wants to say this, but I think we all know what the public response would be if the city decides to stop picking up grass clippings.
I definitely think that's gonna be very unpopular.
Then you're gonna come with commercial
A
and
loss-
private.
Yeah, a loss of services to the taxpayers, and I think there'll be a lot of backlash from that. I know when I was campaigning, that was a common theme. I heard it many times that the truck broke down and they haven't gotten my clippings, or nobody's come here to pick up my limbs. It is an important thing.
All right.
Okay.
Next is the recycle situation. And of course, as I think everyone knows, we have been placing everything that's going to the landfill currently on the recycle. And a lot of this has to do to be market driven. And we kind of talked about this a little bit at the budget meeting, but currently our end user will only accept plastics, number one, number two, and food cans, aluminum cans, and corrugated cardboard. Mixed paper is at a negative of what it will bring in financial wise. But the biggest thing is the contamination rate, and this is not just in Easley, it's all across the country. I mean, it used to be that we did send a good bit of our recycled goods to China, but they have stopped accepting this now. So the market has really just changed. It's not to say that it won't come back, but we're looking at fees. If we continue to do what we're doing now, which we commingle, if we pick that up and it goes to the Pickens transfer station, and if they bail it and they take it to the next supplier, they are going to charge us $65 a ton in order to process. We averaged through January approximately 15 tons a week. So you're looking at 15 times the 65 for each week. That's just the processing fee. That still doesn't count what we have tied up in the manpower and the vehicle to pick the recycling up.
Who charges that commingling fee?
That, the end receiver, the end user will be charging that back to Pickens County, which will in turn around and levy the charge to us. On the next slide, what we are,
Hang on before you move on. I want you to hit on the last point. Right now,
nothing, yeah, currently nothing is, that's in the recycling system out there for us to pick up. Right now, it is all going to the landfill and trash. We currently do not have anything going to the recycle process.
Are we picking up and emptying the bins
Yes, sir, we are.
into the trash truck?
Yes, sir.
So we're sending 2 trucks.
No, ma'am, the garbage truck, we've cut the recycle truck out because
Okay,
that's just another expenditure
perfect.
to pick up. So, no, sir, no, ma'am, it's not.
Okay.
So currently, there's no use for the recycled truck. Am I saying that
Well,
correctly?
we were using another garbage truck because it was co-mingled and it could pack it. But those individuals that were on that crew, we have them doing other landscaping jobs and stuff.
Okay.
We're not sending them out to pick recycle.
But that vehicle that had all the little compartments in it for recycling, there's no use for that vehicle now.
It has not been used, yes, it's not been used since, May, it'll be 2 years.
2 years or 3 years?
I think it'll be 2 years, May, yeah.
Okay.
So who's going to tell my mother?
Let me tell you what, I had to tell my dad. So, I guess I'll be the bearer of bad news.
Have your dad call his mother.
And he'll do it.
So repeat one more time now, what is the only stuff that's financially okay to recycle?
Plastics, number 1 and 2, which are basically milk jugs, drink containers. You've got some detergent jugs that are labeled, but each thing, a bottle or a plastic container, has a number on it
In a triangle.
in a little triangle. And if it doesn't have a 1 or a 2, they're not accepting it. If we pick that up and we had other tray tops, tray bottoms that food containers have, they're gonna have that little symbol on there. But if it's like a 5, 6, 7, if that is mixed in with what we take to the county, that will register that bale as contaminated as far as percent-wise, it would contaminate the bale. And then we would have this,
The assumed things is the bottle is recyclable, the cap is not. So if you throw the bottle and cap in, it's now considered contaminated.
Yes, sir.
Eddie.
Yes.
Question for you. You said, it cost about $65 per ton, is that correct?
yes, sir.
And we were averaging about 15 tons per week.
Back before yes, it was approximately, average was 15 tons a week, yes, sir.
So if we do that, we pick it up and we take it and they charge us, do they then sort it there?
They would probably, now I don't know the exact step, but they would probably, because of the more cost, they would still sort probably what they could salvage out of that bill.
Yep. So then, if my math is correct, that's,
But the majority, Brian, will still be going to the
$50,000.
landfill from there.
I'm sorry, was he talking?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I was just stating that the majority of that bill would probably still be going to the landfill. And one thing we would have to step, the education program, if we would do something, we're gonna have to step that up, because what are in these recycle bins this day and time is a little bit of everything. There's all kind of mixed stuff, and then you also have the loose, grocery bags, and the wrapping from the, like, water containers, all that plastic. That's not acceptable, and those
One
things
of
are
the
full.
biggest contaminants we get is somebody gets an Amazon box and it has packaging all in it. They put the packaging in the box outside. And so when we pick up that cardboard box and it has the plastic and the bubble wrap and all that in it, it's contaminated. We get charged.
Yeah, I guess my point is, depending on what they do with it, and that might be a good question we need to ask. Doing the math, that's about $50,000 a year based on our average, right? Give or take.
Yeah,
About 930 a week.
The slide you have up there, we're looking at 80,000 to, do our little recycle location and still pick up ones and twos. So I don't want it to just go into the dump. So that's why I said, maybe it's important to ask, what do they do with it when they get it? Do they sort it and then it's being recycled?
did she say?
So
I don't wanna give the name out.
if they charge us $65 per ton, that means they will accept it and they will sort it. If they do not, if they will not accept the bale, it will go straight into the trash. Currently, they are accepting no recycling for the city of Easley. None of it is considered to be acceptable.
Okay, so they're not even
They're not, no, no.
Understand.
Well, should we make an attempt on education on the things that we know that's possible to recycle, the
that's
plastics
what-
1 and 2?
That would, yes, so that's what that cost at the bottom left that you would be looking at does. That's if our guys, when they go out on the routes, that would just be picking up ones and twos. You still got other items out there, but that's what they can actually commingle together, are those items right there. So you're still looking at an expenditure of around $225,000 a year. The way that it's currently being done and putting another possible crew, because you would have to sort through on that middle slide at 319 per year, would be, I don't know if we would be able to sort everything that people put in the bin, because when the guys go out on the recycle, the garbage truck or whatever would almost have to be right beside them to take what they don't pick up. So that's just gonna complicate how you pick up. Now, the last and the third one to the far right was the recycle station. If we set a recycle station up, we could start with a couple of truck vehicles that we have here now to see if the program's gonna work. This would be manned. That way, I think that's the best way you're gonna educate the public, is when they actually bring it to the place to see what we can accept and what we can't.
Good.
And the people.
So, and if we would have one truck there just for garbage, for the stuff that would be non-recyclable to take, so that we could separate and keep what can be recycled to make sure that it actually goes to be recycled and not the landfill.
Those bags would have to be opened on site? That would have to open those bags right there on site and sort it?
It would have to be, yes, sir, you'd have to watch. I mean, it'd be manned, yes, sir.
Most people just bring their recyclables.
If they bring the recycle bin up here, I mean, and we'll have somebody stationed to assist them, so.
And he would have also one of the older trucks that would be sitting there to carry garbage, if you brought your garbage, or if it's something that can't be recycled, be thrown into that truck.
If we don't pick it up, are we gonna find a lot of this stuff in ditches and bushes and?
Right now, we're finding it in the trash. Our trash during, not collecting during the coronavirus, has gone up
It's
between about
gone-
40 and 50%
Yes.
additional, in tonnage that we've picked up that is now being diverted from recycle into trash. Well, we can't say that 100% because people are home more, so they're generating more trash than they would have. But we have seen our trash tonnage go up around 40% or greater since the stay-home order and stopping collection of recycling.
What we think as a staff is that the recycling station would work a lot better because the folks that want to recycle are gonna bring it up here. Just like Jim's gonna bring his mother's up here. And that way we would have somebody there to place it in the proper container, and that way it would go to the county because the county would still come pull it and take it.
We've been talking with, yes, this was
Mayor,
a
how about our
partnership.
fire department? They collect those aluminum cans. Could they park their trailer down and get aluminum cans? Because they were close to the smoke.
They could.
They could, yes.
That would be
That
It
would be
would,
tremendous.
the goal would be if council wanted to move forward in this direction, it would actually be in partnership with the county and ran like one of the county courtesy recycle centers.
Same way with
Good.
cardboard. Cardboard would be,
We would have a vehicle to take the cardboard, so yes.
I think over the years, we've invested a tremendous amount of education in trying to get people to recycle. They may not be recycling the right way, but the consciousness that we need to recycle is there. And I hate to just turn the program off like a faucet and say it's all gone. I like the compromise idea of having the manned location, and that way,
well, every individual comes there, gets educated again.
And-
absolutely,
And we as a department are really wanting to see,
I
that-
don't want to see it die. I want to see the concept continue.
and we do too.
Keep in mind that the only way that we can guarantee that recyclables will be recycled is if we do a manned station.
I think that's what we.
I think that's the
I
only
agree.
way we're gonna
Yeah,
keep it
I
from
agree
being
with you, Pat.
contaminated.
Can you hold on one second?
Very
Yes, sir,
good.
Ryan.
No, first let me say I apologize for the way I'm talking because I can hear myself and there's some reverb, so I probably sound weird because it's throwing me off a little bit. But I agree with Pat. I think we have to have a compromise program and can't just do away with it completely. People have become accustomed to it. That's a service to a lot of people that, just like the grass cuttings, they're not going to be happy about. In fact, I called Stephen today, and a couple of my constituents, I've had phone calls over the weekend, just finding out about the recycling and not being recycled and going to garbage. And I know we educated, put some educational stuff out there about this on social media. I guess not everyone's on social media or didn't see it, but whatever decision we make, I think we need to be really, I think it's really important that we have a comprehensive education so people know, including social media, the website, mailers, whatever that takes, because the couple of people I spoke to were not very happy.
If we
I
do
agree.
this, I agree 110% that it
I
would
agree.
be a full-blown
Media
information, educational out
Good.
to the public so that everyone receives the material.
Where
Good.
would we put this recycling station?
Probably right back here.
Where we had it before?
Where we had it before. It's already.
Is the only thing beneficial to any of the city would be the aluminum cans? Is there anything else in there?
Well, we would, personally, I don't want to take too much away from where the county is right now because they're assisting us with this. We're asking for their assistance, so I don't want to destroy the relationship there. Yeah, don't want to do that.
Well,
The other thing is, sorry.
let's do it. I said,
That's what I'm-
we're talking, and let's do it.
It's a-
Good
it's a-
recommendation.
It's a good,
Eddie.
it's a good conversation right now with the county, and they see it as a plus. As long as we can, get everybody on board here, I think it's, everybody's gonna be happy with it. I really do.
What is the current budget for recycling?
I got it on another sheet of paper. It was somewhere close to it was a little over 200 and something.
Okay.
There's three labor, and then the truck and the fuel,
Currently, it's about 170.
about 170,000 in it.
The last thing I would add, as council kind of gives guidance into this, is the goal for this would not to be a permanent solution. We hope that the market will come back and we can go back to the curbside pickup. Right now, the market demand is out of our control. It all has to do with who's taking the recyclables, what the market is for it, what they can get for it. And right now, we're on, I think Central stopped collecting about a couple weeks ago. I think Malden stopped collecting, but they're stopping completely. So we're trying to find some option that we can still offer the service without stopping the service completely. And that's where we've looked at this as a compromise to be able, and the county already has a dozen courtesy sites throughout the county. We would just be adding one more specific for our citizens.
And this would be this would be that much less debris that goes into the landfill itself
Exactly.
and cost the taxpayers money
But we would be assured that it's going to
to recycle.
recycle.
Correct.
Also, will we have a way to control this so it doesn't get out of hand? Because if I can remember before, people was just coming up and just dumping all kinds of stuff in there. And there was questions about that, so, I mean, I would like
Well-
for it to be as clean as possible.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you put
Yes.
it there.
Yes.
That's one of the,
Yeah.
And it will be manned, yes.
So I just want to make sure as we move on and get into the actual agenda, that if the guidance from council is to move forward in this direction from the majority of council. I've heard a couple say this.
Yes. Are we voting on something?
No, we're just giving guidance to the staff so we can start working towards implementation of the program. I mean, honestly, there's really nothing for council to vote on related to this matter. It's nothing that's in our code of ordinances or our resolution or anything. It's really more of giving guidance to staff on how we implement day-to-day operations.
Just directing them in a different way, because right now we're not picking up
Tell my
anything.
mother I didn't vote on this, that staff hated it.
You can say you caught tooth and nail for it, find out.
Starting with the mayor on down.
Just say all those in favor.
Well, I agree with staff's recommendations, and you have our endorsement of it, so let's move to the agenda.
Really, we just wanted to make sure you were aware, if we make this transition, that y'all were in support and understood why it's being made, because you're gonna get the calls. They're gonna ask you why. We want you to be aware, we wanted you to make sure that you were supportive of the decision as we move forward towards its implementation. The goal would be to try to have this done sometime around mid-June. A lot of it's just gonna be getting the final details worked out with the county, getting everything set up, so we're looking at probably about a 30-day rollout.
And I think it's going to be really important that we do make the public aware of the fact that the market has dried up. It's not something we want to do, but the market is gone.
That's right.
I agree.
Blame China.
Let's communicate, social media, the
Blame them for a
newspaper,
lot of things.
but let's go ahead and make this communication.
Absolutely.
Edie, you have anything?
Well, I think there's one last, this is storm debris update and the brush pickup, which has probably been another, it's been a headache for us since the storm hit, but, since the week of April, 13th, when the storm hit, we have, through last Saturday, 625 tons of debris have been taken to the Pickens landfill. We have a ticket for every one of these tons, and it represents about 3 times increase of what we usually pick up. And right now, we are 4 weeks behind. We are trying to get caught. We still have 3 trucks that are working, and these guys are working from 7 to 5 each day, and they have worked 6 to 8 hours the last 3 Saturdays. So they're still, they took 39 tons just from over here at Hospital Hill and Burdine Springs on Saturday. That was the only area that was picked up. That was 11 loads.
Please give them kudos.
And
They
they,
have worked
and we will.
themselves to a
So
frenzy.
hopefully by next Monday, we're shooting to try to be back on schedule, but with everybody working from home plus the storm damage, it's been unlike anything I've ever,
I have a
same.
whole bunch in my front yard waiting for you.
and so does everybody else in Glen Laurel. Yeah, I've heard,
Laurel is full.
I've heard from my neighbors, believe you me.
I mention your name frequently.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Anything else?
thank you.
You good?
I'm more than good, yes.
Okay. We have 2 items of citizens addressing city council. Those 2 items, one is someone is concerned about some debris that is sitting in the parking lot at the Smithfield's Country Club. And that debris is being looked into now by Mr. Holcomb, and he'll be taking that complaint and addressing that. But I think we spoke to him. I think that's just debris that they're just neglecting to haul off at this time. So I think he's gonna be looking into that. The other is a problem down on, down next to Lakeview Drive, which is the pond, and the bridge. And I don't know if I need to comment. Do you want to comment on that, Eric? I think that's a work in progress right now.
Yes, sir. We have got some preliminary numbers from the engineering firm, about $384,000 to replace that. Also, to above a 100-year flood event. So it's about $384,000 to replace that crossover and engineer to a 100-year flood event. We are trying to work and get some funds from the CTC funds, and we have a meeting with them with the COVID stuff. It's pushed that back a little bit for us. Also know there's some questions about the lake there. I can go ahead and discuss that. The lake is actually owned by 4 private entities and not the city of Easley. I've been working with them, trying to help them out with some engineering on that lake and trying to, guide them what to do. But it's a private lake. There's nothing the city really has any responsibility for.
And they still, the families there still would like to sit down and talk to us when most of this is over with and
Correct.
just have a sit-down meeting. you know,
Right.
plan.
That lake is a significant drainage area for parts of the city, and it does take a lot of water.
Eric, the 384 would be to replace what?
$384,000 will include all the engineering, labor, and pipe to replace the crossing right there to basically a 100-year flood event. So I'm trying to engineer it to where it will survive. The history of that crossover, this will be the 3rd time.
There was a problem with, let's say, the northern end at Dogwood Lane.
Yes, sir.
Is that the
It's
same thing? But then at the southern end, you've got the dam.
correct.
So what are you referring to?
There's 2 aspects to this. This northern end is our situation. The southern end with the dam is the homeowners that own that lake's
Okay.
problem.
So the 384 would be the northern end?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And this is the 3rd time this crossover's been replaced in 6 years. So,
How far is that going back up under 123 that way? Isn't there some damage that way?
so that section is only within the city. There are pipes that go underneath 123 and go to where the Toyota of Easley used car lot. Those pipes are owned by the South Carolina DOT, not by us.
And our pipes are smaller in diameter than theirs? Going the wrong
So
direction.
that crossover has about 4 separate pipes. One's a giant galvanized 55-inch steel pipe, and that's the one that's caused the issue, and the other 3 are different sizes of concrete pipe. So I'm basically wanting to remove all that and fix it back correctly.
With one span.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Would it be feasible for us to consider closing that section of that road? I know we discussed this a year ago or more, just to prevent that road collapsing. it is in bad shape at that section. Until we, can see if we get the, funds.
And I would suggest that the road be closed. It is dangerous. There are sinkholes there. You can bottom out your vehicle. So it'd probably be a wise decision for us to close it before someone gets hurt.
I mean, it looks like it's gonna collapse at any point. I mean,
Every rain event, it moves a little bit.
Can we say we'll leave that up to staff to handle then? Is that okay with y'all?
We discussed it previously towards the end of last year. Sorry, we discussed it previously toward the end of last year, and the previous council did not want to make give any guidance on whether they were okay with us closing it or not, so we did not. We did close William Street. So we are more than glad to close this off temporarily until we can figure out what the funding looks like and what the repair will look like.
Yeah, I think that's the right idea to go ahead and close it for the time being, just temporarily.
And reduce the
when we
liability.
And when we discussed it, the neighbors have about, once you get past that point on Dogwood, there's about 8 different exits outside of the neighborhood over there that goes to McAllister, 123, and Powdersville Road. So there are multiple outlets for the neighborhood to take from that point.
It seems to me that if it's in imminent danger of collapse, our liability is just astronomical on that, and all we need is one busload full of kids, and we can't stand that. So to protect ourselves from that liability, we must.
Number 8, unfinished business, we have none. Number 9, we have new business, ordinance first readings. Ordinance number 2020-11 to amend 13.05, disturbing noises. Do I have a motion?
Motion bring it to table discussion.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay. Stephen and Tommy?
I'm gonna turn it over to Tommy and let him.
Mayor and council, as you know, I've brought this to you several times. The construction industry has asked for a few more hours of work, and in all fairness to them, the previous hours seem to be a little outdated. And once we got to looking at other cities and all, we brought that to light. So as we've gone through before, what I'm asking for is that we change it from Monday through Saturday to construction be allowed from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. and on Sunday be allowed from noon till 8 p.m. At any time during or after them for emergency purposes, construction can go. And also in the commercial areas, we have some exemptions that myself or the police chief can exempt for them to do work. So I think that's a fair thing. I've come to you on 2 or 3 occasions, and this is what staff has come up with and asking for your approval.
And just to add on, this is almost verbatim what the city of Clemson and city of Greenville have in place.
The difference we're giving them is 2 more hours a day, and Sunday from 12 to 6.
Nice.
Excuse me, Sunday from noon till 8.
Noon till 8.
What if it's in the area of a church and they're having services on Sunday night? You got jackhammers, tractors, hammers?
Yes, sir.
drills?
I would say that's no different than a home next door that's allowing it until 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Or the church that meets on Wednesday night that is allowed till 8 p.m. during the week.
you know, we would hope everybody's respectful. Of course, sometimes we find out everybody's not, but, you know, I think in all fairness to them, you know, we have neighbors that ride down the road and just see them working and call and complain, you know. They call on Sunday just because they see them working, because they don't believe in it. Well, they've got a job to do also. And, you know, in all fairness, we would like a lot of things, and I'll be the first one to say I hate to see that, but in all fairness, in this day and time, it just does.
Call for the question.
Well, I agree, Tommy, that with all this, with the virus and that's been going on, I don't want to dissuade any, if the contractors are willing to get out there and do it, I don't want to dissuade any construction, any movement going on, so I would vote in favor of this.
And the good thing about this, Mayor and Council, is anybody watching tonight, if they have any objections or have anything, they certainly can get a hold of Lisa or the mayor or city administrator.
Before
And we
second
got one
reading.
more vote, so, you know, we certainly are not trying to leave anybody out. If they have a comment, we certainly want to hear it.
All right, we have a call for the question. All in favor?
Did I miss the motion?
Yeah,
Second?
I did.
Missed
I
all
seconded
that.
it.
Mayor Womack, I spoke with a friend of mine with a great deal of experience in the construction business, and my friend said that he would not want to encourage construction activity on a Sunday, but he would not prohibit it. And I agree with that. So I'm ready to vote.
All right, we have a call for the question. All in favor, show a right hand. And Brian is in favor. Any opposed? Show we have one opposed. B, ordinance number 2020-12.
Mayor, can Mr. Garrison give a verbal vote?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Brian, could you give a verbal vote?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. B, ordinance number 2020-12, ordinance, City of Easley approving the execution and delivery of a development agreement with, I believe, KP Component. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Motion, bring it to table discussion.
Second. Okay.
If you look on the bottom of the screen there, you'll see the blue parcel that we're referencing, where KP Components is in the process of constructing their new operations. It's 8.03 acres. They did complete annexation with council in March. They are moving forward with constructing a 50,000 square foot manufacturing facility that can be expanded to 100,000. With the new construction, they are creating an additional 47 jobs. City and county are in the process of working to transition inspections and stormwater inspections. As this started in the county, and with annexation being completed, it is now transferred into the city. The development agreement details, by the city annexing the property, we became part of the fee in lieu, or the FILO agreement that Pickens County has put into place as one of the taxing entities. The city's agreement that you have would outline that the city would provide a grant on May the 1st of each year. It'd be equal to 50% of the permits paid to the city, and that would be only on work done prior to them occupying the building, and then 50% of their business license fees paid to the city for 5 years. We would use those numbers to calculate a grant back to the organization for economic development, and that would go for 5 years. So after about 6 years, this economic development agreement would expire, but the FILO will actually stay in place for 20 years in our partnership with the county. and I can answer any additional questions that you may have on the agreement, and then Tommy's also been working with them on the development, so we can answer any questions you may have.
What are the details on the FILO?
The FILO has set a base tax based on their current tax assessment, and it only allows a certain increase to take place. The way that would work is pretty much as the value grows, they would get, I think it's 70% of it would be forgiven. And so we would still receive about 30% of the tax base off of that property that we would normally would not be getting any of. And that was all set in place. That's been adopted since, I want to say, summer of last year. Only reason we become a partner in that is because we agreed to annex the property, which made us a taxing entity, which means that we, by annexing, became a partner within the agreement. But we had no discussions as related to the adoption of that agreement.
What's the time frame on the construction and the hiring of the 47 people?
I want to say they're looking at into this current year to be complete with construction, and the hiring would probably be in the next probably 24 months, or probably really 12 to 24 months, depending on how fast construction goes and how the market continues, because
Right.
what they do is dependent on, I think they make components for vehicles. So it will depend on how that market returns and how quickly, on how fast they staff up.
And they are already in production at this time, they're there working now.
Yeah. They're actually in the
Within the
building
building.
next door,
Mhm.
and they're building a new facility of their own out, on their property. They're in, what's the name of the?
Danfoss.
Danfoss, yes, property.
They're moving very swiftly. They have steel delivered as we speak.
Mhm.
So they're moving.
So in the unlikely event that something goes wrong and they don't do that amount of employees, are we still going to do the FILO?
So the FILU is the counties. That is all based on their tax value of what they create. If they don't meet the guidelines that were set, the county will handle any clawback provisions or negotiations take place there. Ours is all based on the fees that they pay to the city. So they pay 100% of their fees, and we use that to calculate their grant. So should they not pool the building permits or never operate and get a business license, their calculation would be based on zero for us, so they would get no incentive. So everything that we do is on the back end. The fee lieu is also that way. They pay 100% of their property taxes, and then the fee in lieu is given. So if they don't pay their property taxes, the fee lieu doesn't take place.
Okay, I understand.
Call for the question?
Call for the questions. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yay.
Any opposition? No? Yeah. No opposition on that, all in favor? Ordinance number 2020-13 to approve a lease agreement. I think this is some property on Folger Avenue.
Yes, sir.
I move that we bring to the floor for consulting.
Second.
So if you look here, you'll see the blue parcel is the property we're talking about. It borders to the west by West End Hall, to the north by the silos that are being redeveloped, and to the east by the Doodle Trail extension that we have constructed to run to Woodside Mill. The goal of this is to put some additional overflow parking on there. It was part of our economic development agreement with the developers of the silos, is that we would look to provide additional parking in this space. We've worked this out with Spalding LLC, and the details related to that is we would lease the property for $3,000 per year or $250 per month. The initial lease would be for 10 years. It can be renewed or extended. We also agree that we will cover the property underneath our liability insurance. And like I said, the goal is that the city would put some we'll kill the grass, put some gravel on it, put some parking stops to show where the parking spaces will be, and it should generate probably between 20 and 30 parking spaces, depending on how we can get flow in there. We'll have to lay it out first to make sure. But they will be providing ADA parking on the Silos development. We have ADA parking in our parking lots, both behind West End Hall and across Folger Street from West End Hall. So like I said, this would be strictly overflow from those parking lots.
So the parking is gravel? It's gonna be gravel as opposed to concrete or asphalt?
Yes, sir, for now it will be. And if it needs to ever be asphalted or made stronger in the future, we can. But right now, the goal would be to just do the gravel overflow lot, see what the usage of it is, determine whether it needs to be improved, and go from there. But the city already has 2 public parking lots that have ADA access and that are paved over there. This would strictly give us some overflow parking should it be needed. If there's a play going on at Foothills Playhouse, we would have some additional parking for the use of the silos or the trail or anything like that over there.
You've used the term gravel. Is there any, I don't know what the difference in cost would be between wrap and gravel, but using wrap might give it more.
Talking about
of a
riprap?
No, sir. Reprocessed aggregate.
Oh,
pavement.
aggregate. Yeah, between that, we'll look at whatever the best option is. I know some people use quarry dust because it gives you almost like once it gets wet, it creates almost a concrete
Concreted.
type structure, type base. The key is we got to get out there and get the grass killed off, get it graded the way we kind of need it, and then we'll figure out what the best option is to.
And again, I don't know the difference in cost, but once you compact wrap, it hangs in there pretty well.
Yeah, and that would be the goal, is we'll at least make it last 10 years. If you put gravel in there, yeah, we'll have to be there every couple of years putting some additional out there to fill in spaces, so.
What is the status of the Silo project?
We met them out last week, Thursday, and they've turned in plans for Tommy to, I think he's approved them, for some of the base work, really more civil and, maybe the building that's on site. They're doing some additional work for the silos, doing some additional plans that'll have to come for approval. But right now, their goal is you'll start seeing some major work out there here in the next 4 to 6 weeks. I say that they'll be out there working hopefully in the next 2 weeks, but they're going to start doing stuff like pulling the metal off of the building to re-insulate and do stuff like that. So you'll see it is proceeding, and hopefully we'll see late fall or winter of this year. And they're working, and we've tried to honor their request. They're working on their push for their reveal and what all is going to be a part of that, and that should be coming out in the next 4 to 6 weeks. So we're kind of trying to honor that request, to let them be the ones to push out what all's going in there. But to say the least, I'm excited. I think Mayor's excited. He's been out there. They're super excited, and we're looking from probably around 3 to 5 businesses being within that facility.
Call for the question.
Call for the question. All in favor of this ordinance, please raise your right hand.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody opposed?
Brian's got his hand up, y'all can't.
Ordinance number 2020-14, authorizing the sale of real property. Anybody make a motion on that one?
Motion to bring it to table.
Second.
Second. Okay, I'll turn this over to Tommy?
Mayor and council, the, people wanting to purchase the property, there's 2 lots back here on Harlem, and then, or Davis, and then 1 big lot on Liberty Drive and Liberty Road, or Liberty Highway there at the ball field. This developer has worked very close with us, for the past 2 years or so. They are the ones that developed the homes right there at the railroad track, over on Grant Avenue, over on West Fourth. They have been a very good partner with the city of Easley, and they've approached us to purchase these lots. It is staff's recommendation that this be done in order to get some more housing down in the area, and so that's where we're at right now.
We're talking people coming off Old Liberty Road, merging into Liberty Drive. If these houses there, if they don't have them, they have them right up in that corner, isn't it gonna cause a blind spot?
Yes, sir, if, we will have to see that, I mean, the state is gonna see that there's a view around there.
There's setbacks.
Yeah.
Up in that corner though, they ain't much to sit back.
By the time you do the 30 foot from each road and everything, then the setbacks, and then you got the, you know, it would depend on.
What's
on
their
the area.
estimated houses to get in there?
What's your current zoning?
Right there, I believe it was GR2, but I won't,
Okay.
I cannot swear to that. And that gives them lets them allow to have the 6,000 square foot lots. They are not gonna put multifamily, it will all be single family.
I think the property on Liberty Drive totals up about 2 acres.
That's correct.
So your 6,000 square foot lots with
Yeah.
setbacks, and they might be able to get 3 or 4
Yeah.
lots in there. Then you're talking about 3 more between Hastings Circle and Davis.
Yeah.
So what they've pretty much offered is about $4,000 per home they can develop to purchase the property. So they've offered $4,000 for the 3 on off of Hillcrest or the 2 off Hillcrest and the 1 off of North A, and then they've offered, I think it's $14,000 for the lot there on Liberty Drive and Old Liberty. So I'm assuming they're gonna think they can get between 3 and 4 lots.
That's right.
Have there been any signs put on, or is it the time to put the signs over there if we get public input that something's gonna be done on those lots?
Not unless they plan on rezoning it to something else, there's no
Okay, so that's right.
public notice
And
there.
the key to remember is just because we sell the lots doesn't mean they'll be developed. Until they come in with plans and permits, we don't know that anything's gonna happen there. You know, they may buy the property on Davis, they may buy both of them and decide, you know, one isn't feasible, we're just gonna build in 1 lot.
So it will go before the planning commission.
No.
Not necessarily, it depends on what the current zoning is.
Yeah.
If they have to change the zoning,
They'll have to go
then
through
it
the
will.
process.
They,
Understand.
Are those vacant lots on Hastings and Harlem?
yes.
Houses hadn't been there before though, had they?
And as I said, it's been a very good working relationship with us. They've gotten 1 lot here a few weeks ago from a private individual we tried hooking them up with, where a mobile home had been burnt sitting over there for a few years now. And so, you know, they're cleaning up that area too, so
Good.
that works out well for everybody.
And you mentioned Wilbur Street, they paid us, I think it was $15,000 for that lot, they were able to get 5 homes.
Yeah.
Right on Wilbur Street there.
And they sold very quick, and the people seem to be happy.
Good.
So then
And
that-
these are being sold to individuals,
They're
not being
that-
rented, so.
that is
so
correct.
we're
That
in-
is correct.
improving the housing stock plus investment.
For low to moderate income, and that's,
Right.
that's what we've been
Affordable
wanting.
housing.
You know, that's one of the things we promised when we,
That's one of our
All
objectives,
them
affordable
houses.
housing.
and so it's worked out very good that the city kind of just stepped back, sell them lots. They do it, private between the buyer and the seller.
That would brighten and new that neighborhood on Hastings Circle and Harlem. It would make it look better to have those new houses down there.
Mm-hmm.
And encourage everyone else to improve
That is correct.
their houses.
That is correct. And that's what we want.
And whose wards are they in?
I think both of them,
One,
Both of them, yeah, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
both of them, Liberty,
Liberty Drive.
Liberty
mine.
Drive.
I think Hastings Circle may be in,
Yeah, I think Haygood's and Terry's.
Yeah, Liberty Drive is mine.
Yeah, Liberty Drive, but, Haston and Davis Street is mine.
Yours,
Yeah.
that's right, yeah.
I just couldn't remember if Hastings was in Councilman Robinson's ward or not.
Yeah.
I know there's a cutoff somewhere right around there.
Where that line goes.
Any other questions, comments?
Yes, sir. Mayor, when
Yes, sir.
when I'm looking at these tax parcel numbers, I look at the last 4 digits. So if you look at the first one, number 9904, that is 112 Davis Street. The Pickens County tax assessor says that property is worth $4,500. The next one ends in 8183. That is 120 Davis Street. The tax assessor says that is worth the first one was $4,500. The second one is $4,000. The next one, 2362, is 266 Hastings Circle. The tax assessor has that valued at 0, and I'm sure that it has some value. We need to find out somehow what that might be worth. The next parcel number ends in 2733. That's one of the parcels on Old Liberty Drive. Tax assessor says that's worth $16,000. Next parcel is 1144, which is the point at the intersection of Old Liberty Road and Liberty Drive. I think that parcel has very little monetary value in itself. The last parcel number ends in 2601, and that is also on Liberty Drive, and the tax assessor says that is worth $17,500. The total of all that is $42,000. It's been my experience, the tax assessor is usually on the low side, and we're selling this property for $27,000. I don't want to vote against an ordinance on first reading, but if I'm going to vote in favor on this, at second reading, I need some values on those other properties, and need somebody to convince me that we should sell taxpayer property for less than what the tax assessor says it's worth. Thank you.
And on his comment, excuse me.
I was gonna say, could I give a little history on the Liberty Drive one?
Yes, sir.
Liberty Drive was bought 10, 12 years ago, and the only reason it was gotten was because it had a lot of dirt on it, where we was doing some work in the city, and we utilized it, we utilized the dirt, and that was the only reason we bought it. It has been sitting there, an eyesore, ever since. The 2 lots over on, what was it, Davis? On Davis, well, I'm not disagreeing with you on the 4,000 to 4,500. Lots are worth what you pay for them. There's never that I'm aware of been anybody approach us to purchase them lots. And then the one over on Hastings is the same way. The little corner piece that you're asking for value on, I would say there's not no value. We actually contacted him and asked him to survey it in with that, so we didn't have that piece just sitting out there like a sore thumb.
30-foot setback from DOT in all directions, you probably have
You're not gonna get nothing. So, I guess to answer your question, while I understand the tax assessor's value, I guess they're going by square footage. We got our value from whatever we paid for it when we got the dirt off of it, because it's been sitting there idle for 10 to 12 years, just scrub brush growing on it. It hadn't even been utilized for parking for the wreck that I'm aware of.
And I just add that we have to maintain those lots.
That's right.
And that's a considerable amount of time and energy we spend trying to keep those lots mowed and looking decent for the neighborhood. Awesome.
So,
And we're generating
Well, I
no
understand
revenue.
your concern, Councilman Robinson. I would say that, I'm certainly not in the real estate business, but compared to what's been going on the past 12, 15 years that I'm aware of, I think they've been negotiating with us in very good honor on not only these, but many others. And so, but I will do as mayor and council wish.
Was there a price that you gave for Davis Street and Hastings that I missed it, or?
It's on the very back of what was sent.
Okay.
I think it was 4,000 for each of those 3 lots, and then it was 13,000 or 14,000 for the Liberty Drive ones.
Okay.
Tommy, what was the value of the borrowed dirt? Do we have any concept of what that was?
No, ma'am, I couldn't begin to tell you. Like I say, I remember when we purchased it, and the only reason we got it was for sale across from the rec department, and it had a lot of dirt on it, and we hauled dirt off there for a long time, doing several projects until we got it down to where it was
There
at.
is- Yeah,
And then
and
at
there
that
is a
point-
cash
Sure there was, yes, yes, ma'am.
value to the borrowed site, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I will do as mayor and council wishes.
But those lots been sitting there bringing no income whatsoever, just sitting there. Now you're putting houses on, it's gonna be bringing in tax money, plus it's bringing housing, affordable housing.
Affordable housing. I'll call for the question.
Question's been called for. All in favor of this ordinance, raise your right hand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Item 11.
No opposition.
I'm sorry, yeah. Item 11, new resolutions. Resolution number 2020-07, certifying a site within the city of Easley, abandoned buildings. I think this is the silos on Folger that we'll be talking about here. So, ask for a motion.
Motion bring it to table discussion.
Have a motion, we have a second.
Nancy
Second with
second.
Nancy.
You are correct. This is the silo property. As part of the South Carolina Abandoned Building Revitalization Act, it was developed to encourage and incentivize development of abandoned buildings. The act requires that the local government certify that at least 66% of the buildings were abandoned or closed for business for the last 5 years. I think council is aware that this was a lot longer than 5 years it was closed to business. We have been able to certify that based on business license, permits, or anything that has taken place for the property. The developers have asked for this certification so they can use the abandoned building tax credits to help with the redevelopment of this site. Once it's complete, we will give them this certification and they will be able to use it as they need to get those credits.
Okay.
Any
I
questions?
understand, that's a pretty straightforward.
Call for the question.
I think it's gonna be a beautiful site once they're complete.
I'm looking
They've
forward
got
to
some,
it.
some nice plans for that side. We have a call for the question. All in favor, say aye. Raise your right hand.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Good. Resolution number 2020-08, amending the City of Easley Policy Manual.
Move that we bring this before the board for discussion.
Got a motion?
Second.
Second. Discussion?
So this was discussed, Mayor and I discussed this with a couple department heads. The current policy was actually adopted about 15 years ago. And then we updated it when we adopted our new personnel policy in October 2016. The main purpose of setting limitations for how far assigned vehicles can go was to reduce the amount of mileage that was put on a vehicle. Since that has been adopted, we have reduced our average vehicle mileage significantly through our lease program that we're doing with our police cars and administrative vehicles and others. I'll point it at you. You don't have one. Sorry.
Appreciate you.
You're welcome. What we're also recognizing is that we do have more and more employees that are applying for jobs here that are located within the county that are more than 5 miles away. The 5 miles from the edge of the city limits, but when you start talking about going up towards Pickens, you start getting 5 miles away pretty quick. You start going towards Clemson or Central, you get 5 miles pretty far away. And most of our take-home vehicles are taken home by police officers. And as you know, it is getting more and more difficult to find police officers. And this is a good incentive they have that we offer to them. So the recommendation that is coming in front of council would be to raise it from 5 miles from the city limits to 10 miles from the Easley city limits. The way it is set up is once they go above that, and this is how it's been before, is we deduct from their, at the federal rate for mileage daily that they would have to drive back and forth. So for police officers, it may be once every 3 days. For other employees, it may be every day. And then we would also limit it that if they did have a take-home vehicle, right now there is no stated limit for how far they can go at that GSA rate. We would set it that they could not be any further than 20 miles outside to make sure that if they do take a city vehicle home, that they are close enough to respond back for any issue or emergency they need to get back on. The goal would be to make sure that all of them are within the 10 miles, but should they have to go a little further, we might have a few that are out there.
I noticed you said call back or emergency situation.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Don't mean to be a devil's advocate, but does that mean going to the grocery store and Walmart and?
So for the vast majority of these vehicles, like I said, with the police officers, they're taking it home and they're parking it for 2 days and not coming back in to the next day. For some of our department heads that have take-home vehicles, it may be there's an issue where we have a tornado come through at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they all have to come back. It's to be used for that. Now, our policy, this, as you will see, it's numbered 4. There's actually 8 items underneath take-home vehicles that are established, and one of them is it does allow if you're on your way to or from home, if you need to drop your child off at daycare, if you stop at the grocery store on your way home, it's not considered a misuse of the vehicle. If you drive to Clemson to go to the grocery store and then come back home because you live in Easley, yes, that's an issue that we will deal with. But if you live between here and, say, Dacusville, and you hit the grocery store on your way home, our policy allows for those kind of uses to take place. But once it's parked at home, it's only for emergency or callback use.
What about the liability of the passenger? Will we have any liability if they had a child or the wife in the car?
We do. They would be covered underneath our policy, just like whenever the police transports a criminal. That's, we cover anybody that's in our vehicles.
Are we, as council persons, are we covered if we were riding with the mayor or Mr. Hawthorne somewhere?
You're actually covered if you leave here going to a function and you're on.
Yeah, our insurance actually, if you're going to a city function, you're covered.
Wow.
Now, and that could be going to meet with a constituent at their home to discuss an issue. You're in the process of doing your elected duties, you're covered. Now, if you're just driving to the grocery store, that's a different story. But if you are going home tonight because you were here for the council meeting, you're covered.
But then also in this is once that person reaches the 10 miles, then they start paying the city to use that car up to 20.
And we have so many where them and their spouse split the difference between where they work. Their husband or wife may work for GHS and they work for us, so they live somewhere maybe in Powdersville. Or their wife or husband works for the city of Clemson and they work here, so they try to split the difference and live somewhere near Liberty. So we're trying to understand that as times have changed, where people are locating, where we may want to be as close to our job as possible, not everybody shares that view, and we want to make sure as we're recruiting people that we aren't shorting ourselves on the best people because we tell them, I'm sorry, you can only take your vehicle inside the city limits. So we're trying to recognize that recruiting aspect of that as well.
What about off-duty jobs? Side jobs?
Well, that's not addressed in this, but I mean, it can be addressed down the road, yeah, with each department.
I mean, if you drove to Clemson, would you charge mileage for that? Or?
That's gonna be something we'll have to deal with.
That's something to be discussed, but we have police and fire currently, if they're going to off-duty work where they're in uniform using vehicles, that's considered part of, we cover that. Same thing for if firemen, if they get hired for somebody whose fire alarm goes out and they have to have somebody monitor it and they have the fire truck sitting there, we normally don't charge them for taking a fire truck or sitting there. So there's some things that we can address down the line, but that is not part of this policy anywhere. That would really be more of an outside work policy that would need to be addressed.
This one we had already discussed.
Right.
Brian, did you have something you wanted to say? Okay, I'm sorry. You had your hand up.
Call for the
Okay.
question?
Call for the
I didn't mean
question.
to be rude.
Call for the question. All in favor of this resolution, please raise your right hand.
Yes.
Yep.
Something big going on. That's right, that's right. C, resolution number 20-20-09 to appoint Philip A. Snow to a 2-year term as chief magistrate.
Municipal
I'm
judge.
sorry, what did I say? Chief municipal judge, I'm sorry.
Bring it to table discussion.
Second.
Second. Yeah, I'd be glad to, it doesn't matter. What this is of course, we, prior to the meeting, we went into executive session and discussed and met this individual, and no vote was taken. But at this time, we would like to offer it up for discussion to appoint Philip to a 2-year term to our court to begin the 26th of this month would be when he would be sworn in if you approve it.
I'd like to make a comment on him again. If you know, I knew him. I've known him since 1976 when he came to the sheriff's office. He served the sheriff's office. He served Central Courts. He served Liberty Courts. He served Pickens Court. Very honorable man, very smart man, very well trained, very fair. He runs his court. He don't let nobody tell him what decisions to make. He actually runs it. So I recommend him highly. Call for the question.
Good. Call for the question. All in favor of this resolution, please raise your right hand.
Yes.
Thank you. D, resolution number 20-20-110, authorizing a lease purchase agreement. And I will ask for a motion.
Mayor, that was 2020-10. I think it's 110.
Did I? Did I say 110? 10, excuse me.
Motion, bring it to table for discussion.
Second. And I'll turn this one over to Steve.
So as we discussed last month, and council voted to do a reimbursement resolution and authorize staff to purchase these vehicles as part of that reimbursement resolution, we went out and we procured the best interest rate and advertised this to banks throughout the region, and received 7 proposals. Like I said, council, with the reimbursement resolution, This would allow us to purchase the brush truck, which is what we talked about last month. And actually, I've already had your picture taken in front of it. It's been in service for about 2 weeks now. So it's allowed us to reimburse ourselves for that cost from this bond. Like I said, we did receive 7 proposals. Recommendation is being made to award to Carolina Alliance Bank. They were the lowest guaranteed offer at 1.704% interest rate. Payments for this would begin in March 2021 and are already reflected in the proposed budget that you should have received, that you did receive. So should be good within the budget for next year as well.
Call for the question.
Have a call for the question. All in favor of this resolution, please raise your right hand.
Yes.
Make a motion that we adjourn. Got one more?
Yeah,
I didn't see it, I'm sorry.
got one more. E,
I didn't see it.
resolution number 2020-11 to designate May 10th through the 16th, 2020 as Peace Officers Memorial Week. Have a motion?
Second.
Who second? I'm sorry, who second? Terry, okay, second. Comment on this one is, we do plan to, do a proclamation to Captain Murray, tomorrow, the next day, but we did not want to do it, in the chambers or inside because of the, social distancing, so that will probably take place the next day or so outside in the area where we can space ourselves, if you do agree to pass this resolution. That was simple. Call for the question. All in favor of this resolution, please raise your right hand.
Yes.
Now can I make the motion to adjourn?
You can. Yes, you can. Now, I would like to say one thing before we go. The news that we found out late this afternoon about the establishments, would you speak on that for just 1 second? About the Pint Station, I think, and the other places that we did not know about.
There we go. All right, so one of the things we did find out today from the governor's office is that the definition for restaurants does include bars. So that had been some confusion that we had received from DHEC. They had told us that it only included locations that had a lettered kitchen. So if you walked up and they had their DHEC inspection letter, that's who it was included. And in speaking with the governor's office today, they did say that the governor's interpretation of that is it does include bars as well. So that will affect places that don't serve food, as well as coffee shops that do not serve food and places like that. So we'll be disseminating that information out tomorrow. We've already done some tonight, but we'll continue to disseminate that out. And again, this is just an explanation or another example as things start opening up, that there is confusion that is out there between when the governor's orders come down, where things lie, especially as they're opening up gyms and salons and beauty shops and stuff like that, to figure out what our requirement is for enforcement and implementation and guidance and all of that. So it's just another example of where we're leaning on the state to help us.
Is that Monday they said on the barbershops?
Monday, next Monday.
Any questions concerning that? Okay, have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? Second. All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you, Brian.